That's cool.
Oh, there you go. Keep going.
It just doesn't want it. Oh, Jesus. That's all it took.
Yeah, buddy!
All right. Hello, beautiful. Here we go.
This is awesome. This is my very first pre-war car. I had to do some horse trading, and actually I didn't even go there for this. I went there for a 1972 Mustang, and with some horse trading I had to remove a barn, which we got a little creative about, and we managed to get 3 vehicles out of it. I got the Mustang, a Plymouth Reliant K-car, and I was making the deal. They're like, well, there is a car in the barn. If you do all of this, you can have that as well. And this is it. Like, the Mustang's cool, but this is like everyone's dream. I mean, owning one of these, sure, but finding one in this condition and pulling it out of its resting place, buried deep, deep, like, this is wild. Absolutely wild. And the fact that it came out in one piece, it wasn't ready to fold in half. There's still paint on some of the undercarriage of this thing. I'm really, really excited. At this point, we have things we want to do here. The interior was disgusting. When we were pulling, or when I was pulling all the stuff out, I'd never had a respirator pulled so tight in my face, but it was really filled with, I don't know, baby beds that were ripped up, you name it, it was like in there.
In the comment section down below, what in the heck is this thing? That is a kid's jacket. I don't know what that was. I don't want to know. On an ice chest, I dare you to lick it. Lick it.
But there's no holes in the floor and it's very solid. Now, my plan was to drive it down to a local car show, and we weren't able to do that. Currently the engine is locked up, and hopefully we can work through that over the next few hours. It's been about a week since I pulled it here, and I've been soaking it with Marvel Mystery Oil, some ATF, and some other stuff just to see if we can't get it unlocked, and so far it hasn't had that happen. In fact, I've been trying to rock it back and forth because it's an old hand. We'll cover that, but first I need to do something very gratifying, something I've been waiting to do for a nice day so I can have the camera out and we can document washing this. Washing this car that has been buried in a barn for 50 years. Not only inside, outside, but inside too. I can smell the air just wafting by the open driver door window, and it is nasty. So we're going to use a proprietary mix of 17 herbs and spices, and we're going to see if we can't clean this up. Fortunately, it's not really like lichen and stuff. It's just dirt and all kinds of mixtures of droppings from critters. You can see little handprints on the windows. So while the Cessna is going overhead, oh, it's a seaplane. We're going to go ahead and start washing this.
Hey Brian.
How you been?
Good. Thanks for inviting me.
It's been a while since, I think the last time we did a video together was we did the Buick Century.
Yeah, that's right. Our 1940 Buick. No, it was our 36 Chevy panel truck.
Oh, it was the panel truck.
It was. Yeah, that was our final project before we stopped doing Hemming stuff together. But now you've got this, which is, I mean, in my opinion, this is cooler than a 36 Chevy, and probably even cooler than a 40 Buick Century, because I love DeSotos. I mean, you showed me pictures of this, and I was like, oh, that's a 31 DeSoto. And I was wrong. It's a 32. because we looked up the serial numbers, and it turns out that although this looks just like a 31 DeSoto, I think it's a deluxe four-door, but it's clearly a four-door sedan, which was the most popular 31 DeSoto. It's actually a 32. Now, if you look at a 32, if you look up a 32 on Google, it's going to show you this one. It's got a rounded radiator shell, and it's got some features that don't look like this car, and that's because this is an early 32 where they were basically identical to the 31s, and they produced them until January of 1931, or January of 1932, when the actual 32s came out.
You call them the real 32s?
Yeah, I mean, so it's Chrysler referred to these as an early series 32 DeSoto and those as the later series 32 DeSoto, and they had been doing that for a couple of years prior to this. So there's an early 31 that looks like a 30, and then there's the ones that look like this that are considered the 31s by most people.
Right.
So really the only difference between this and the later ones is it's got different serial numbers, and it has freewheeling, and it has a slightly improved transmission in other respects.
You have to explain freewheeling, because I'd never heard of that before, and you explained it, and it's wild.
Freewheeling was a great automotive fad that lasted for about 3 years in the early 30s. I'm pretty sure it was done by 33 because a lot of states went and made it illegal. And it is what it sounds like, which is there's an overrunning clutch in the back of the transmission. There's other ways to do it, but usually they did an overrunning clutch, which means when you're rolling down a hill, instead of your rear wheels turning the drive shaft, turning the transmission, turning the engine, which allows you to engine brake,
Right.
the transmission turns, but it doesn't turn the drive shaft turns, but it doesn't turn the transmission, and you just coast down that hill, which saves you a lot of gas, but
Right.
given the braking of early 30s cars, puts a lot of burden on a system that can get overwhelmed pretty easily.
I can't even imagine, because, you know, over there we have the 63 Caddy, and that's got drum brakes all around. And going down steep hills, the brake fade is real. So I can't imagine. I mean, it's lighter. It's about half the weight. But it's also got like a third of the braking capability.
You would not want to turn the engine brake off around here. Now, if you were in Iowa or something, it might be a better deal. You're rolling up to a stop sign, you haven't been running the brakes trying to keep a consistent speed down a hill. They're not going to fade on you because they're still nice and cold. And it's worth pointing out that everything from Plymouth to Imperial in 31 did have hydraulic brakes, designed by the Lockheed brothers, improved by Chrysler, and eventually licensed by Henry Ford. But they are still a cast iron drum brake, and they are subject to expand when that cast iron heats up and moves away from the brake shoes. So don't ride your brakes, and maybe don't use the freewheeling around here. But there is a lever right under the steering wheel that allows you to lock it out, so it doesn't have to happen.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's some of the difference between? There's rumors that this was registered as a 30, and explain why this is definitely not a 30.
This is definitely not a 30 because even the late 30s still had a fairly thick radiator. So this radiator shell is kind of a uniquely Chrysler styling thing from the 20s and 30s because they were trying to make the hood look longer. And eventually Chrysler also did away with this separate section of cowl and had the hood continue all the way up to the windshield.
That's wild.
Rather like a modern car. But getting rid of the thick, exposed radiator was a way to make the car look a lot less old and a lot more modern. And if you think about the Miller shell that came the next year, that's even a step further because it goes out in front of the radiator, and there's really no suggestion of radiator left besides its mere presence there. It's becoming a decorative grille more. But this is like, the early step toward that. And I love these winged radiator caps. The Chrysler cap is reproduced on the Chrysler building in New York City that went up in 1928. There are winged circles like that in the building, and they look just like a 28 Chrysler radiator. Chrysler in this era was a really fascinating, dynamic company. I mean, Walter Chrysler only started the company in 1925 when he took over Maxwell.
After he left Buick.
Yes, but he didn't like Billy Durant very well. So he worked for Buick for an incredibly high salary, and then they still tried to get him to come back. And Billy Durant was going to come in. He said, no, I won't work with Billy again. I want to start Chrysler. And he tried to start it with Willys, but that didn't work because John North Willis came and took the company back. So eventually he got called in at Maxwell, and there's where he was finally able to build his 6-cylinder car that became the Chrysler. The 4-cylinder Maxwell became a smaller Chrysler, eventually became the Chrysler 52, eventually became the Plymouth.
Okay.
And it's the same Maxwell 4-cylinder, just updated. And to give you something in between Plymouth and Chrysler, they originally developed a Chrysler 60 series, which had a smaller 6-cylinder, which is where the engine in this car comes from. And eventually they decided that these cheaper Chryslers were diluting the prestige of the make. So they said, we're going to spin off the 4-cylinder Chrysler to make Plymouth. We're going to spin off the 6-cylinder Chrysler to make DeSoto.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And DeSoto would not have happened if Walter Chrysler had been able to buy Dodge Brothers a year earlier, because Dodge Brothers was not part of the Chrysler organization until 1928. It was being run by bankers. So when the Dodge comes in, it's almost an identical car to this. Initially, it's a more expensive car to the DeSoto, and then when the Airflow comes along in 33, they make DeSoto the more expensive brand. They don't give Dodge an Airflow, and it becomes a cheaper brand and actually does better than DeSoto from then on because of. But this is, if you want to think about it this way, this is kind of like, in the marketing sense, this is a 1932 Dodge.
Gotcha. So the other one thing that I found interesting, you were saying that the difference, that there's always things you can kind of like tinker with to make things look different, but dashboards on these are, they're there forever.
I mean, you can change anything, but yeah, it gets harder and more expensive, yeah.
And the older ones were more squared off, and this one's more of a round, like oval.
Right, because this is a period in history where we're transitioning from Art Deco, which is like the Chrysler Building or the Empire State Building. They called it zigzag deco or skyscraper deco, to the more streamlined, flowing shapes that we associate with locomotives and airplanes and ocean liners. And the 32 grille obviously is a real step in that direction, but this car is a transition. So that angular dashboard that you're talking about in the 29, 30 cars, it looked pretty old-fashioned by 31, whereas this oval is a more flowing, streamlined shape and more in the idea of, you know, the evolution of design. And of course in 32, you start getting skirts on these fenders, not on Chryslers, but they show up first on the Rio Royal 8.
Okay.
Or the Flying Cloud, I can't remember. But a Rio starts with these, and then in 33, everybody's got these skirted front fenders. So it's this march from zigzag deco to what we call streamlined modern. Right. And a lot of people still call Art Deco, but it's more
streamlined
modern, or modern, some people call it, because it's got an E on the end of the word modern.
Okay.
But yeah. Or ocean liner deco, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so this is a great time capsule. And even though I know you said that this is a repaint in a different color, it's still emblematic of, we think of the early 30s as being the sepia toned era because the photography is that way. Kodachrome was, I think, started in 36, but it was actually a much more colorful era, and this car's a good representative of that.
I would believe it was, the original color actually matches the green of the accents.
The darker stripe.
I think they just painted over it.
Okay.
I may be wrong, but I'm still trying to dig into this. I'm, again, just starting to pressure wash it. It's coming out a lot nicer. You saw the pictures of it. Yes,
it was really buried. Yeah.
I'm surprised it came out in one piece.
This car's remarkably solid. I mean, these 19-inch tires are still holding air. This 6-cylinder, as we were discussing before, this engine goes back at least to 1929, and it might actually go back to that Chrysler 60 series. And it continues forward in time all the way to 1960. So I had a 1960 Dodge 3/4 ton pickup truck
with a flathead.
With a flathead 6, almost identical to this. They improved the water jacketing, put full-length water jackets on it in 1935, which changes the bell housing. So a lot of these cars have later engines and bell housings in them because it's a fairly bolt-in swap. And I think this engine is something like 196 cubic inches, probably something like 75 horsepower. And by 1960, you know, you've got 230 cubic inches. Wow. And I think 115 horsepower, 120 horsepower.
Pulling a car that weighs what, 2,600 pounds?
Yeah, it's not much. No. I mean, this car has a steel framework inside of it, unlike contemporary GM sedans, which were all hardwood framed.
Which is what saved it.
Which is one of the reasons that it's not rotten. Yep. No. And I think that does make it a little bit lighter than a GM sedan that's essentially a wooden crate with tin nailed on the outside. But no, this is a beautiful car, and congratulations to you for getting it. And thanks for letting me see it.
Well, you know, anytime, bud.
Nice to see you.
This thing turned out spiffy. I went into this for the Mustang, and I stayed for the DeSoto. If that doesn't make sense, I initially thought, hey, this thing is buried. It's going to be kind of crushed. It's going to come out in 2 pieces. This thing is going to be parted out and all over eBay. But I don't even think I could part with this thing at this point. Is it perfect? No, it's far from perfect. Are we going to potentially have to make some patch panels? Maybe. There's some spots that could probably use a little bit of TLC. The floor is solid, which I don't understand how. But this thing has exceeded all of my expectations, except for the fact that the engine's locked up. So let's go ahead, and I mean, let's marvel in how nice this thing turned out for a second, because it did turn out really sweet. Like, I can't even. But we do have to go ahead and address the elephant in the room, and that is, why doesn't this thing turn over? And fortunately, it looks like we can remove the head with very little effort. We're just going to have to take some parts and pieces off and get our eyes on the prize down there. And yeah, so let's bring you guys in closer. Let's take a look and pull this head off. Well, guys, we've made some significant progress on the DeSoto. Not only did we save it from its grave, we were able to get it cleaned up really nice and learn a lot about it from Dave. Now, unfortunately, things kind of went downhill from there. Yeah. Still wasn't able to get the engine, freed up after a week of it soaking in Marvel Mystery Oil. I pulled the head. We noticed there was a lot of corrosion on the top of it. I wire brushed it. Then I started filling the entire block up with some old heating oil. Things have kind of gone a little bit awry. See, I pulled the exhaust and intake manifolds off today. Fortunately, the intake manifold and the exhaust manifold, no cracks, no nothing. It just came off. It was nice. But then we found out that it was just crammed full with rodent leftovers and wonderful stuff, just destroying it. The two rear exhaust valves easily came off. More or less came out fairly easily. Unfortunately, that's where it ends. The other ones there's no keepers left in it. It's all pulled apart. And they are completely locked up, seized, solid. You can't even get this thing to budge. And this one I was heat cycling when it made an expensive noise. And yeah. Now, from what I can tell, this engine has been rebuilt at least once in the past. Only thing I can think of is welding nuts onto it and using a slide hammer to remove them. And then we're looking at what? New guides. And if we're in that deep, are we going the full, 13 yards or whatever the expression is and rebuilding the whole thing? And it's a Babbitt engine, and I really don't want to be paying for a Babbitt engine rebuild. That it would be not a good thing. So I'm trying to keep this on the budget side, and it doesn't want to be. I'm going to leave it in the comment section down below. I want your guys' opinion and your thoughts. I'm thinking a rebuild on this seems a little bit like we could save it. We could put it in a crate. We could rebuild it 20 years down the road or whatever and reinstall it if we want to. Or, that's always possible. We just put a pin in that. But what we can do in the meantime is drive the thing with a more modern engine like what Dave was talking about. We can just grab a, late 40s or whatever, the one with the downdraft with a little extra horsepower. Not by much, because you don't want to be going like 80 miles per hour in this thing, because, yeah, I don't want to die. But there's always the option of going completely ham and throwing a low horsepower. Oh, look at that angle. So good. Putting a low horsepower 318 in it and just running that. But I personally like the idea of grabbing a pickup truck engine from the later variation with the insert bearings and the downdraft carburetor. Comment section down below. I'd really like to know your guys' opinion. But we have to keep, the silver lining on this. This came out so much better than I was expecting, and I can't wait to be able to get this thing on the road and drive it. A nice Sunday cruiser with me and the wife. But just another piece of American history saved, and this thing is just gorgeous. I feel like I need a fedora and a Chicago typewriter, the old Tommy Thompson. And then hopefully we'll be starting up the old Mustang very soon too. We'll be doing a Willa start on that. If you like this content, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and if you want to help support the channel, you can head over to Lunaroutlaw.com, where you can pick up really cool products like the Carb Buddy. But until next time, we're going to put a pin in this thing. I want to know what you guys think, and hopefully we'll be seeing this thing running and driving on the channel very soon. It'd be a really cool grocery getter along with my 70 Buick Skylark. Keep your shiny side up, everyone, and God bless.